What profession do you think would cripple the world the fastest if they all quit at once? Story 1. Without a doubt, electrical workers, engineers, electricians, power plant operators, jobs involved in keeping the power grid running. A shutdown of the power grid would be instantaneous, causing all other sectors to either fail or become drastically crippled. Instantly. Yeah, there are professions that would be more tragic or devastating, but the profession capable of doing it the fastest are the workers on the power grid. Story 2. It would be any profession that enables the bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Farmers, plumbers, HVAC technicians, electricians, and the trades that supply water, electricity, heating fuel, waste disposal. The one that would take us down the fastest truck drivers. We are so dependent on transportation. If it stops, most of humanity starves. Story 3. Honestly, the pandemic showed me how essential grocery store employees are. Even if the workforce was replenished quickly, it would have a sweeping impact. I wish more of them saw that as the impetus to organize and unionize. The sad part is in my nation. The grocery chains are an oligopoly and very anti-labor. Story 4. Not necessarily the absolute fastest, but much faster than you'd think. Early childhood education teachers. Many people simply wouldn't be able to go to work or to work from home. This is certainly the profession that would screw everything up the fastest for the minimal amount of money we're paid. Anyone seriously involved in keeping a power grid running is making much, much more. Story 5. Son, doctors aren't important, lawyers aren't important, politicians aren't important. If every doctor, lawyer, and politician disappeared tomorrow, a city like New York would keep chugging along as if nothing changed. But garbage men? If they disappeared today, panic would be rising by tomorrow. In 3 days, front-page newspapers would be calling this a national emergency. In a week, the entire city would grind to a halt, and people swim in their own filth. And in a month, people would start wondering if the city will survive. Don't ever speak ill of garbage men. My father when I was 12. Story 6. All essential personnel like first responders, and I do mean essential, not for convenience. Any industry that would cause an upset within a week if they didn't show up. Basically, anyone who doesn't work in an office. Linemen, plumbers, electricians, sanitation workers, medical personnel, the ones actually dealing with patients, not ones in admin, first responders. First responders for the obvious reasons, but also because adults in the U.S. are helpless. The petty they call 911 over far outweighs the emergencies most days. They also throw the biggest fits over being told something is a civil matter and not a police matter. They'll start whining about their tax dollars like we're all tax exempt. Sanitation would be next in line after them. It won't take long for streets to become absolutely disgusting without someone to pick up the garbage. Story 7. Truckers. At least in North America, if all of the truckers quit driving on the same day, then within 2 days, you'd have nothing. No food in the supermarket, no gas or diesel in the gas stations, no medical supplies or pharmaceuticals for hospitals or drugstores, nothing that you use on a day-to-day basis. I've delivered food and medical supplies for years, and I will tell you that just about any supermarket that you go to receives an entire trailer load, at least one, every single day, every day. I spent the most time working for Kroger, and I'll tell you that a standard Kroger store, and I'm not talking about those gigantic Kroger marketplaces, just a regular Kroger supermarket that only sells food, receives 30 to 60 pallets of food and goods per day, 3 to 6 pallets of milk, the equivalent of 3 to 4 pallets of bread products, and that's not even counting Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and LA's deliveries because those guys handle their own products. They didn't come on the Kroger trailers. Daily, the bigger places in wealthier suburbs would get 2 to 3 entire trailers per day, an entire trailer of milk, and most of the trailer of bread, again, every single day. When I delivered the medical supplies to hospitals, I delivered everything but the drugs. Hospital gowns, saline, rubber gloves, scalpels, everything that doctors and nurses need to save your life. A fairly average-sized hospital got a trailer load every single night. Bigger hospitals in downtown would get 2 to 3 trailer loads per night, again, every single night. Your supermarket and your hospital, no matter where you are, do not have enough stock to keep you alive past about 2 to 3 days. And that's not even counting the fact that there's no more ammunition deliveries, no more cash being delivered, no more armored trucks collecting what's in the safe, no more building supplies, no more tools. Amazon, UPS, FedEx, and the USPS are all immediately gone. Nothing ever gets delivered again, and at best you'll get one more tank of gas for your car. There's also no aid, no Greyhound or city buses, no garbage collection. Anything that runs on consumable energy like gasoline, coal, kerosene, all stops. Anything that creates waste stops. As far as I know, Wastewater treatment facilities need a lot of chemicals to clean the water, or at least trucks to haul away the filtered contaminants, so I'm guessing that your local tap water would be contaminated within a week or so. If you're still hooked up to one of the few coal-burning power plants, you're in the dark. Even if you're hooked up to a nuclear plant or solar power, the minute your battery fails, you get no replacement. You're in the dark. If your solar panels get damaged or stolen, you're in the dark. There might be a profession that would collapse North America's infrastructure in less than 2 days, but I don't know what it would be, and you'd have to prove to me that that profession doesn't rely on trucks. Story 8, law enforcement. If you take a group of cavemen, they will always establish a pecking order first. Before they collect food and water, they will establish roles. Without enforcement or an enforcer, there is no synergy or civility in a group. No other profession matters without civility, and civilization cannot exist without rules. And rules cannot exist without the enforcement of those rules. Story 9. All the supposed low-skills jobs. The reason why they pay is because they are essential, and our rulers do not want those people to be able to stop working for a strike or anything else. If you keep those workers in a perpetual state of poverty, they can never afford to not work. Story 10. Truck drivers. In 2 weeks, shortages would cause mass chaos. Riots, run-on stores. In 3 short little weeks, you're basically back to the Stone Ages. No fuel. No supplies for hospitals, power plants, grocery stores, wastewater plants, etc. We keep America running every single day. I'm lying? Go look it up on Google. Many professions are essential to life, but the American truck driver is the lifeline of this country. Story 11. Without a doubt, logistics/distribution/transport, whatever you call it. You can't ship or receive anything. Utility companies can't get parts or equipment they need to maintain infrastructure. Eventually, they fail. Raw material producers can't ship their product to refineries. Refineries can't ship the materials to manufacturers. Manufacturers can't ship their products to businesses. Businesses can't ship their product to stores. It all crumbles and comes down. Story 12. If all power grid workers quit at once, the world would face a rapid and catastrophic collapse. Without electricity, critical infrastructure would fail. Hospitals would be unable to operate, water supply systems would shut down, and communications would go dark. Within hours, chaos would erupt as people struggled to navigate a world suddenly plunged into darkness. The economy would grind to a halt, transportation systems would fail, and panic would spread as society grapples with the loss of modern conveniences. Story 13. Nurses. Regardless of the hypothetical, many people don't realize that we're going to be seeing a healthcare crisis more so than what already is going on. The baby boomers are reaching that age where they will have a higher chance of needing hospital visits, and baby boomers still in the workforce will be retiring. That includes nurses. According to the ANA, we could be seeing about 1/3 of nurses within that population retiring in the next 10, 15 years. Around 18%-ish of nurses end up quitting either from burnout, stress, or unmet expectations of the career. I saw many of my coworkers either travel or quit after COVID. I can't imagine what another pandemic will do to the workforce. Story 14. Bruh, how has no one said firefighters yet? Most people don't realize, but if we didn't show up as quick as we do, entire cities would burn to the ground. Y'all talking about garbage building up and there wouldn't be people around anymore to make garbage. Everyone would die and the cities would burn. Houses are literally made of dry wood and plastic nowadays. Story 15. Trucking, not even a question. We take for granted the immense and complex logistics network that supplies everything in our lives. If all of the truckers quit, every grocery store, restaurant, lumber mill, steel mill, clothing store, and many, many more would be completely out of stock and unable to function before the end of the week. It doesn't matter if a boat, train, or plane reaches their destination. Without a truck to pack, haul, and unload the product, there is no way for almost any modern business to survive. Every meal you eat, every shirt you wear, every commodity you buy is the result of a symphony of logistics networks working in unison to deliver goods to the appropriate place. And we would all do well to remember that. Every society is 3 square meals away from chaos. Vladimir Lenin. Story 16. In my opinion, and I might be a bit biased here, semi-truck mechanics. If they all quit, the trucks would not work, and nobody could get anything. This might be a more major problem in the United States or America, but I think it is still applicable to most of the developed world. By the way, I'm not a semi-truck mechanic really, just a regular old mechanic. Of course, though, other professions would probably be more long-lasting or instant, but I think it is one worth mentioning. Thanks for reading. Have a great day. Perseverance is not long road. Story 17, janitorial/housekeeping/trash collection. Everyone can harp on as much as they want to about how theirs is the most important, but you notice if they miss a single day. Now imagine a week, month. Ooh, I take out my own trash and clean up after myself. I thought of you. That's why I included trash collection. Taking time out of your week to go to the dump? Now imagine everyone has to. The lines would be amazing. Story 18. My first thought was also logistics. Without the ability to transport goods, we all just stop. But it's a pretty small industry when it comes to employment. A few people haul the majority of the goods. But if we knew it was gone for good, we'd pivot and start growing our own food and bartering with neighbors for their crops. Grown by small-scale crops can be learned pretty fast. Not being able to buy toys won't kill anyone. It's sad, but the world doesn't need 90% of manufactured goods. We need food, shelter, and social gatherings. However, medicine is one of the largest employment industries, and that requires a lot for education and skill. That's the industry that has taken us from a 30-year lifespan to 75 years. And with that infrastructure gone, I wonder how quickly that would fall. Story 19. Long before the lack of food or infrastructural services, medical aid, or anything else, we'd be in anarchy. As such, without the military or police to try, but fail likely to control social unrest/crime, we'd be Ed, which we're going to be anyway, but I don't mind the few extra days to do what I need to do. Story 20. Any kind of so-called unskilled labor could do it, but from personal experience, if a nursery is shut down even for a day, people go bat. The current economic climate makes it practically impossible to have children without two parents working full-time, and workplaces don't care if your kid is sick or the nursery is closed. The average family is only a few missed paychecks away from serious financial trouble, and the knock-on effect would be catastrophic. Story 21. Industrial engineers/operations. You wouldn't be able to charge people for electricity or water because there'd be nobody to solve the network flow optimization models, so the power and water would turn off everywhere. All organizations, credit processing, and payroll would fall apart. All of the other things you care about, like your grocery stores being organized into aisles and having goods shipped to them, would fall into chaos. Story 22. Wastewater management. *T stops flowing. Outbreak of infectious diseases. Freshwater rivers, streams, and watersheds get polluted for centuries. Hospitals are overwhelmed. People, workers in every industry get sick. Production of fuel, food, medical supply breakdown. The modern world stops working. War starts. You will need to defend what you have, but take what you need for your people. Story 23. Actually, if you look at the grounding of the Ever Given in the Suez Canal, you would know that in just a week or so, trillions of dollars worth of goods went undelivered. But after shipping company personnel, I would say grocery, Wally World Store employees. If everyone from the cashier to the truck drivers quit, we lose distribution, stocking, service, and payment. Even the self-serve can't be used if there's no one there to open them. Sign for the alcohol. Fix errors. Story 24. Clerks. If you don't have anyone to sell anything, stock the shelves and deal with the asses people turn into when talking to people they feel are lower than them for some reason. Then, the world would be screwed. You could try to get people to do it themselves. But look at Walmart self-checkout. The bitching and theft is really making them rethink that whole idea. Story 25. Delivery drivers, egg truck drivers, and trains. If produce, meat, and toiletries weren't getting to shops, all of humanity's most occupied cities would implode at light speed. Surrounding areas would crumble next as people look for refuge and sources of sustenance. I feel that wouldn't be a major issue, as staying close to water sources would be absolutely necessary. Story 26. Seafarers. Pretty much all global trade ceases. Maintenance and repair on subsea cables connecting the continents stops. Maintenance of underwater pipelines stops. Engineers working in power plants are probably the only other group where you'd see an almost immediate breakdown if they all quit at once. Story 27. We all rely on each other at some level. Many essential jobs like grocery store workers are low-skilled and easily replaced. Anyone can do it, but we don't want to. But we need someone to. Those grocery store workers rely on other high-skilled jobs for various needs: doctors, pilots, even accountants. It's an intertwined network of needs. None of us are irreplaceable individually, but as a group we all need each other. Story 28. Not the fastest, but the most severe, considering the number of people that need to quit to bring the world to its knees. There are 2 software projects that are actively maintained that a majority of other software projects rely on for critical function. I'm talking operating systems, airliner flight computers, software and weapons of war, etc. What are these projects? TZ for Time Zone Data Synchronization and SCLITE, a compact and efficient database. The former is necessary to make sure daylight savings is accounted for, and every time the times get adjusted in various regions. Leap years, leap seconds, all that. My understanding is that it's basically a huge mathematical function that newcomers just can't pick up, and it needs to be rigorously tested all the time and get updated quickly when legislation in certain areas requires time zone adjustments. The database is how a lot of projects store settings, such as mobile phones, airliners, and missiles. How many people are involved in these projects? 5 total. If they just got up and quit, things would work fine for a while. But things could easily start failing well before replacements could upskill themselves. And think, security certificates to browse the web require precise times. If your TZ data is no longer valid, no internet, no online purchases for you. If critical bugs are found in the database project, basically every device online could be a ripe target for hackers. It's kind of terrifying that much of the world's digital infrastructure just assumes these 5ED people will be around forever. Story 29. Well, if COVID has taught us something is that nearly literally every single one of them would at one point or another. But the fastest would likely be those working at the electrical plants. The second contender would be gas stations. Third, and only because we all have reservoirs on our homes in my country, regardless of the reliability of the grid, water. Story 30, Welfare Department. You ever see when the EBT card stopped working so the whole hood showed up at the supermarket to fill multiple cart worth of food? When the system came back online, they left carts loaded to thaw and rot in the aisle and just left. Story 31. Aside from electricity, which, as mentioned, the second would probably be trucking. Pretty much everything you eat is shipped by truck. Everything you buy is shipped by truck. All medical supplies and equipment are shipped by truck. Gasoline is delivered to gas stations by truck, and so on. It would take longer than a power grid shutdown, but without truck drivers. So the food would run out, and the gas would run out so you couldn't drive to where the food is. Story 32. If you mean it like a general strike, it would be the electrical engineers at the power plants. They are constantly working out the ebb and flow of power supply and demand. Plenty PhDs with a hand hovering over a big red button that they need to press to stop a very bad thing from happening. It wouldn't even take 20 minutes if they all quit at once. The whole world would go dark. Even the operations that are more direct but still attached to the grid would be putting power to grids that are in emergency shutdown because someone was supposed to hit the big red button 15 minutes earlier. It would take a few hours for waterworks to do that, but they'd be next. Traffic control might be next after that. People don't realize that traffic signals are basically an IT job now. Having enough of them blink red because someone didn't fix a bug would certainly cripple them all city by city. After that might be longshoremen. That strike only took 4 days. The bananas were going bad in the boxes, and that was enough. Story 33. Shipping trucking professionals. Pretty quick, everybody runs out of the they need. Everything stops working because nobody has the supplies to fix it, nobody else can continue their work, and the entire economy grinds to a screeching halt as people default back to subsistence agriculture, and by that I mean starving in their paved-over neighborhoods. Story 34. The fastest, teachers. A massive percentage of the workforce would be forced to stay home. It would impact every industry, including hospitals. We got a tiny look at how that would go briefly during COVID, until daycare for people necessary for the function of society was approved. Only daycare preschool workers in most places also require some sort of early childhood education diploma and could be considered teachers. So only home daycare or nannies would be available. But there's not nearly enough of them, and most people who are essential can't afford them. Story 35. My husband is a plumber, drain cleaner. If they stopped doing their jobs, this world would go to hell in a second. Some folks aren't too bright about what they flush. Husband has found a literal potato in a drain once. I'm a sterile technician. If we stop doing our jobs, good luck getting sort of procedure done on you. From scalpel handles to medicine cups to Huck towels. You're not even getting your disposable items delivered where they gotta go, because who's gonna pack them up? Story 36. Honestly, I think there are far fewer professions that wouldn't cripple the world than those that would. As far as fastest goes, we have built our world around electricity and digital infrastructure so much that having that all be gone in a split second would wreak havoc. While they aren't, strictly speaking, necessary for life, taking them out prevents most people in the modern age from doing their jobs and would cause a cascade. Story 37, probably not as respected as medical workers or electricians, but people don't appreciate the internet until it's gone. ISPs, specifically network architects, infrastructure tradespeople, and network operation centers have to do round-the-clock work to keep your network healthy and available. This applies to lines and cellular data. Story 38, daycare workers. Nobody to watch the kids. Half the young parent workforce got to stay home. Or grandparents, who are typically middle or upper management. That affects every industry those folks work in. Plus, the kids don't get a head start on education, so our numbers get even farther behind than they already are. Eventually, in pretty short order, failure trickles up just like prosperity trickles down. Totally different debate. Story 39, electrical grid engineers and workers. We are positively addicted to electricity. If the grid should go out, sure. You might have a generator and some meager solar. That'll get you through in a pinch, like a winter storm, hurricane, etc. But if it's longer, then what? No, really, then what? You go to refuel the Jenny, and the gas station pumps are dry. No one is making deliveries since all the fuel transport infrastructure is offline. That generator is a paperweight. All right, so you use solar. Most people don't have enough to run everything. And let's be very real. You're only going to have a few years of usability on these large batteries if you're using them daily. But that's okay. You'll suffer catastrophically long before then. Everyone else is without power. Food, fuel, and other resources will be taken by force by those most desperate and by those with the most guns. Oh, you hurt yourself. Got a minor cut that's infected? Game over. You have a toothache? Game over. You run out of food or potable water? Game over. Waterborne illnesses due to poor hygiene? Game over. Fridge breaks? Game over. You live in a hot climate without AC furnace breaks in the winter? Game over. You're not going anywhere to get it taken care of. No one has power. You're screwed. And when winter hits, you're boned. Unless you've got massive amounts of food squirreled away and enough stable fuel, wood, coal, etc., to last you the winter. And unless you own a massive farm and have a forest nearby, you'll exhaust your supplies in one season. And remember, when things get that bad, everyone will be targeting you, since you're the one with the most. You're the one with food, with lights, with medicine, etc. And I have zero faith in the general population. We went ape bonkers when COVID hit. We're still reeling from the economic and societal impacts from it. Preppers may last a few months longer than everyone else, but we're a society, and we're annoyingly brittle. Story 40. It probably depends on your location as to which profession quitting would screw you over. I live on a small island measuring 45 by 90 kilometers. Truck drivers wouldn't directly screw us over, but I imagine getting goods to the port at the other side would see our ability to gain supplies diminish drastically. We deal with no electricity from the mainland on the regular, so I feel we'd be reasonably well placed to deal with such an eventuality compared to other places in the world. But no tankers bringing in fuel. We run a lot of generators, so that'd hit hard. Oil and gas currently provides the fuel to keep us all going, whether that be power generation or transport, so I'll go with that. Story 41, definitely sanitation workers. If all of them stopped working, we'd be drowning in garbage. Not to mention the spread of disease would be crazy. Cities would stink, and it'd be a health disaster within weeks, if not days. People underestimate how essential sanitation is until they start thinking about life without it. Story 42, seafarers. 80% of world trade is carried out by ships and mostly invisible to the public eye unless an accident occurs. Cheap labor from Philippines, India, Indonesia, and few more Southeast Asian countries make up majority of the crew. If they start calling quits, we are truly ed with departmental stores, gas stations, and power plants screeching to a halt with no supplies. Story 43, teachers. Not only are they essential to the healthy running of a society, the second they all quit, a huge portion of the workforce needs childcare quickly. The impact of schools closing during COVID was monumental, and one of the biggest reasons that it was so damaging was people in other industries having to take time off, impacting multiple areas of society at once. Story 44. Despite public perception and all the systemic issues in it, if police officers all quit simultaneously around the world, we'd likely enter the purge in damn near every area within a day or two. In the US, we'd just devolve into the Wild West all over again, but with more guns and less desert. Story 45. I think in terms of cripple the world the fastest, I would have to say if every government worker just quit and didn't bat an eye to the consequences, police, fire, health, military, etc., within 24 hours, society as a whole would collapse into a level of anarchy that would be unrecoverable. Now, at a local, non-worldwide level, the most devastating loss, if all the workers quit, would be the complete loss of a power grid. Story 46. A lot of these suggestions are good in principle, but are quickly replaceable by either being low-skilled or easy to promote the next person from a lower role into that one. I'd say if all world leaders quit at once, everything would collapse. Not as much in the more politically stable countries, but everywhere else would be power vacuums and probably a lot of war that spills over. It would massively disrupt supply chains to the more stable countries and make them unstable too. Story 47, economists/bankers/stockbrokers, it people at banks. For good or ill, our financial system is entirely built around the movement of money and trading of debt and commodities. If they all quit, the economy would be in total freefall, which means everything would break down. Every service, every utility, every government, every job, it all runs on the idea that people do a job for wages. If suddenly you remove the possibility of being paid, then they stop doing it and complete anarchy reigns. I give it less than an hour before people starting working out that net payments don't work, and people start storming into banks en masse to get their entire bank balance in cash, which runs out extremely quickly. And by the end of the day, that money becomes worthless because no one will trade in cash. Story 48. All of the minimum wage jobs that people look down on, grocery store workers, gas pump attendants, retail store workers, servers and bartenders, fast food workers. If people couldn't buy the things they need, couldn't drive to where they needed to go, and couldn't eat because shelves aren't stocked and restaurants are closed, there would be an actual purge. Story 49. Pilots. You have no idea how much it would cripple the economy if planes stopped flying. They don't just move people, they move cargo and create a massive flow. It's not just the public that relies on them too. Many governments contract their work out. Truckers. It would take about a day before the chaos set in. With no one able to deliver the goods from one spot to another, I imagine it would be an apocalyptic level scenario. Food, fuel, chemicals, equipment, it all stops moving completely. Linemen. No power equals signed. I give it an hour before everyone goes ballistic. One I'm studying for, AP. You'd think an aircraft mechanic isn't essential. I found out much later it's not just aircraft. It's turbines and power generators too. Plus planes would be falling apart just trying to get anywhere. Story 50. I'd say it's probably ship captains. So much stuff is carried by boat that would cripple multiple industries. A lot of metal ores and oil, etc. are entirely reliant on tankers. Without that, all construction and manufacturing grinds to a halt, as does most chemical companies, which would affect water treatment. There'd be no wires for electrical repairs, and prices would absolutely skyrocket in a matter of days. But petrol gasoline supply would be the big hitter, as even intra-country supply gets affected, as does aviation, due to lack of fuel. Things like water treatment or electrical workers would cripple sections of a country the quickest, but they'd have little affect outside their local areas. Story 51, farmers, IT professionals, truck drivers, train conductors. There are tons of professions that would cripple the world within a few days or weeks. I actually think it would be IT professionals because of how much of everything else relies on these systems. The people making the food is what I'm worried about the most, because even if the systems getting the food to you break down, you still have the food. If we suddenly lose a few weeks of food production, that would be catastrophic. Story 52. Most of the trades would indeed lead to major issues if they stopped working. However, of all the trades, I'd say power plant operators, electricians, engineers, etc. would be an immediate impact. Why? Other trades professions have a day or two before we take notice they are gone. When it comes to power, the USA grid is constantly being balanced and on the brink of shutdown. Perhaps 5 hours of non-operators and we'd all notice. Story 53. IT, and other technicians. People rely on technology too much. Many kids these days can't do math without calculators. If things boutique, people don't know how to do things without the computer. If your cell breaks, people don't know phone numbers anymore because you write them down once in your phone and expect it to be there and use it to automatically call rather than entering it yourself. Story 54. The problem with that question is that many professions could be replaced by someone if needed. They wouldn't do as good a job of it overseas. It would be devastating quickly if no garbage was collected, but there are enough people that can drive and learn to collect garbage if all garbage collectors quit. It would be horrible if all the doctors in the world quit. More people would surely die, but the world wouldn't cripple. We fly a lot, but the world would get by with shipping, which is the primary way of moving things along in our globalized world anyway. I think whatever halts shipping would be the profession to look for, but not sure if sea captains would do it. There are other people on board capable of navigating and steering. Perhaps if all the maritime pilots quit, but not sure if that's enough either. Story 55. There are a lot of different professions that would cripple the world, but most of them would take at least 1 or 2 business days before it happened. Think supply chain infrastructure-related jobs. One that I think would have the most immediate significance would be grid operators. Most of the world's electrical grids are very manual in how they're operated, requiring grid operators to work consistently to match supply to demand. If they all quit, you'd pretty quickly see catastrophic grid collapse on all but the smallest electrical grids. Without the power grid, some services would continue working on backup power for a little while. But the big issue is that most of the ways an electrical grid catastrophically fails involves damage to the grid itself. Even if that's due to a supply mismatch, you'd end up with weeks of work required to bring the grid back online, with no one having the specific knowledge required to do so. I can't really think of a profession which could cripple the world faster. Others could probably do more total damage by quitting, but their effects would probably take longer to show. Story 56, IT engineers. Remember in July how the CrowdStrike thing shut down half the world for a day? Imagine if no one was there to bring it back up. Like some others have said, power and electricity infrastructure workers are also highly important, but right after that would be technology workers. Story 57, bummed out. Nobody mentioned bankers. I think the top comment on electrical workers is probably better, but having no functioning monetary system would equally the world in a matter of days. Imagine everyone stops getting paid for whatever it is they're doing. Your money is worthless because nobody can access their accounts. No credit card purchases, no tapping into the equity of your home, no 401k or pension distributions. We'd have Mad Max world once people started running low on food. Story 58. If we are talking about jobs, then mass transport. All airlines and trucks and trains and buses. Since most of the world is just in time with almost anything, you run out of local food, items in just a few days as warehouses empty. You might have power and internet, but the economy would suddenly be in shambles. Money, but no food to buy. You would be okay in your personal bubble for a bit, but if you could not maintain transport for the economy, we would fall apart quickly. Story 59, remember back in July, all that damage from one company having one computer bug. Yeah, the people in charge of maintaining the internet win. Their stuff actively coordinates all the other stuff, and it requires constant maintenance just like all the other infrastructure. Only difference is while power and water infrastructure parts are separated and have quite a bit of momentum where they'll keep operating the global internet stuff and snowball and cascade, impacting itself really, really quickly. The pipes will still function as pipes. The solar panels will make electricity and one section going down in one place does not bring the rest down. But the global internet infrastructure is very much a set of dominoes. Story 60. Anyone responsible for maintaining infrastructure, if we focus on the question and highlight the world the fastest, then farmers, drivers, cargo freight workers. And ignoring my own bias, anyone maintaining the internet and banking infrastructure. Most logistics for farm food to table require some level of complex, server-driven distribution system for the scale of countries these days. Not being able to distribute food resources globally would cripple societies. Story 61, I feel like, of course, if you got rid of almost all of any one profession, there would be complete collapse at some point. Truck drivers, bin men, etc. are good examples, but what people seem to be missing is that you can replace them. Yes, if they all disappeared overnight, it would be a problem, but it wouldn't be hard for someone to get in a truck and start driving it somewhere. Story 62, whatever you notice quicker. Those who maintain the power grid would be the first. We use and need electricity for every aspect of our lives. Hospitals, nurses, doctors, other staff would take some time, but not seeing any staff there would freak people out for sure. No one would know people stopped maintaining the grid until something went wrong. Not sure the level of automation there, but if there was an outage and no ETA for a repair, people would know. People are commenting on air traffic controllers. There are procedures for unmanned airports, but those are not high traffic areas. And I don't think the majority of airline pilots remember those procedures, or those would be useful in busy airports. People we would not miss. Hospital admins, telemarketers, door-to-door sales, scammers, Costco bill checkers, and for our American friends, pharmacy benefit managers. Farmers would take a little time to notice due to the supply chain complexity and seasonality of foods and how much processed food there is. Story 63. Maybe sailors? Everyone says truck drivers, but even domestic production relies on imported parts, and that is true almost everywhere. Even plants in China use materials and parts from all over the world. Without ships to move that stuff around, every country has to make everything themselves, and no country is really set up to do that. Story 64. If all healthcare workers like doctors, nurses, and emergency responders quit at once, it would seriously mess things up. They play a big role in keeping us healthy and safe. Without them, hospitals would be overloaded, and people wouldn't get the medical care they need. It would create a huge crisis that affects everyone. We overlook how important they are, but they really keep everything running. Story 65. Stop indulging trash posters who simply generate tons of questions farming karma. Yeah, let's talk about the fastest way to cripple the world. Sounds like a harmless exercise. The answer to this question does more harm than good. This kind of question simply gives data to people who would do evil with this data-free and unobstructed access to crowdsourced info. Story 66. Programmers, IT specialists. Without it, there would be no internet and all electronic card payments would stop. This means no communication, telephone, and internet. No resources to look for online, no business, and no essential systems like trunk lines and eNodeB towers. The world would screech to a halt. I know this since the pandemic hit, this area was designated as essential. Story 67. Civil servants or the non-political apparatus of the government administration. Multiple systems that we rely on a daily basis would suddenly be without anyone to steer, and more importantly, no one to operate. Typically in these positions, people are trained to fulfill these jobs through a career-long standard and work outside of party lines as the agreement that regardless of party, they work for the country. But if civil servants quit, well, that would globally cripple everything. If anyone watched this season of The Boys, the House Speaker posits the same issue to Homelander, and he immediately freezes up. What do we do when all of the civil servants quit en masse? The only way Homelander is able to take control of government is through a martial law declaration and an appropriate propaganda spin. If Homelander just walked right up to the White House and said, "It's my country now," and the civil servants all quit, well, he would be the ruler of a pile of unorganized, rudderless systems crashing into each other, and the bureaucratic machine would grind to an absolute halt. Story 68. If a large percentage of these critical workers, consider nurses and doctors, or firefighters and police officers, stopped working all at once, the impacts would be immediate and extreme. Healthcare systems would buckle under the weight of emergencies and continuing patient needs, and public health and safety would rapidly deteriorate. Similarly, if first responders like firefighters and police were to leave the workforce, that would drive cases of emergencies out of control, impinging on community safety and response times. Both such eventualities would have disastrous implications for society. Story 69, truck drivers. This should be the #1 answer. Without truck drivers, none of the other professions mentioned in this post would even be able to function. There would be no fuel, gas, no delivery of materials used by those in the trades, no groceries, none of the equipment the master chemist in the top post needs to do his job, you name it. Most everything you deal with on a day-to-day basis was delivered in a truck at some point. Everything that gets offloaded in our ports gets loaded onto trucks or trains. Most everything on those trains eventually ends up on a truck to get to you, the eventual consumer. The parts needed to keep the power grid going, they come by truck, and without those parts, the power is not coming back on. They can't keep it running without the proper supply chain. Nothing can sustain itself without one. Nothing. If every truck driver and box truck delivery driver quit all at once, it wouldn't take long for everything you depend on to start shutting down. Sure, you might have power and running water until something starts to fail, but who's going to be there to run it when we're all completely out gasoline? It will eventually fail with no parts to fix anything or fuel to get to it and do the job. Where are you going to find food and TP after yours runs out and everyone has already panicked, bought, and cleared the shelves out? Truck drivers need more respect than many of you give them. They're far more important than you think. Story 70. While I've seen a lot say truckers and electricians, power plant workers, I'm going to throw out precision machinists. Think about it. Everything you use or have has been made with some form of machining involved. Truckers wouldn't have their trucks if not for machining. Electricians wouldn't have their supplies without machining, so on and so forth. Nothing used today outside of woodwork that I can think of off the top of my head in the modern society is doable without some form of machining. Story 71, oil and gas workers. The knock-on effects are the widest of any of the possibilities. Imagine no fuel, no power, no transportation of any kind. Even EVs can no longer be charged in large enough numbers to make a dent. Shutting down transportation is the big one that affects everything that's not immediate local to you. If you can't walk to the source, pay with cash, barter, and then carry back the good, consider it non-existent. Oil and gas are also the base chemicals for a large swath of the chemicals we use, including medications, plastics, and fertilizers, so it hits medical, production, and food. There's a reason people go to war over oil and gas access. Story 72, the automotive industry. I work in automotive. We are exempt from several protections available to workers in other fields. Dealerships work their employees to death and always expect more. Going to HR just puts a target on you and they get away with so much. Money so good, though? Sacrifice I have decided to make for my family. Story 73. If all electrical and mechanical engineers quit their jobs at once, the impact would be huge. Power plants would shut down, leading to a complete blackout. Industries, offices, elevators, internet, and computers would all go offline. Life as we know it would come to a standstill, leaving us in the dark. Story 74, electricians mainly, but also any of the trades like plumbing, mechanics, etc. In my experience, way too many people undervalue those who pursue trade school and overvalue those who pursue a collegiate degree. Where I went to high school, college was pushed so unbelievably hard on students with an outrageous emphasis on SATs, ACTs, college acceptances, etc. To the point where many smart kids with aptitudes for the trades that I went to school with felt obligated to attend a university and either pursue a degree they weren't all that passionate about, or go to college and realize it wasn't for them and pursue a trade anyway. Sure, maybe a collegiate degree looks good, but it sure as hell ain't going to mean a damn thing when the plumbing bursts in one of the campus buildings and you've got 73 humanities majors all staring at each other with not so much as an inkling of how to fix it. We need tradespeople. I think specifically of electricians because in our society, everything runs on electricity. Hospitals, electricity, schools, electricity, homes, electricity. The famed universities with their state-of-the-art technology, electricity. And when it's not working, who do you call? The person with a master's degree in linguistics who can give you a 45-minute lesson. Great vowel shift of the 14th century, aka someone like me, or the person who actually knows how to make electricity do the electricity things. Without them, and without anyone in any of the trades, we would revert back to the pioneer times quicker than you'd know. Without electricians, plumbers, or mechanics, we'd have a completely analog world with no working toilets and broken-down cars. In other words, get out your quills and chamber pots because we'd be absolutely up *T Creek without a paddle. And I'm saying this as someone with a graduate degree. College is great, don't get me wrong, but it is not the only way to success. And we need to stop portraying college as the only route when many professions and vocations not only don't require it, but wouldn't even benefit from it. Story 75. You're missing the point. The linemen can't go fix the substation if their kids' teachers don't go to work, can't fill up their pickup truck if the fuel isn't delivered and the manager doesn't turn on the pump. If there's a wreck on their route, they can't go anywhere until fire, PD, and EMS clear the scene and a tow truck driver tows the wrecked car. If the substation is out and the water treatment chemist can't charge their electric car, then they can't get to work. We're all co-equal parts of a complex system. Story 76, healthcare. Not the customer service part, but nursing, surgery, basic care. If nurses, doctors, techs, and everyone attached decided to take a hike in the next few minutes, there would be total anarchy. Between the people who actually need to be seen, the hypochondriacs, and those who develop new conditions, you would see a new animal instinct come out of humans almost instantly, and this world would flip on a dime if everyone decided to take off.